Okay. Good morning, everyone. Hope you've
Good
enjoyed your
morning.
evening. And hope you guys are ready to continue with today. I don't think we're going to go the full time today, but I don't want to cut anybody short on what, if you guys have questions or comments or things you want to talk about, we can do that as well. So, can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sometimes you're like, all right, is that a real question? Am I supposed to answer? Or maybe I should have said, raise your hand if you can see the screen. So anyway, so we'll look at continuing on. Thank you for those of you who were able to get to the assignment yesterday and this morning. Many of you have had comments already back from Brad on what you submitted. And we'll also, as part of getting started this morning, we'll look at what some of you have submitted and have that open and available for everybody. I haven't given name attribution to anybody, so this is anonymous review and comment. And sometimes being able to have others look at this this type of work will be beneficial to you as you go forward. So we'll get started with that. All right. So we'll be focusing mostly today on the E and the R of power. So examining activities and revising. First of all, how many of you remember why the E is in lowercase? If you know, raise your hand. Okay. Anybody want to take a guess? I know Eric's really good at making some cynical guesses, so. All right, Eric, go for it. You want to type or you want to talk? Or you're just kidding?
Because it's the tedious and more difficult part.
Good guess, but no, it's better than that, which is good. Yeah, it's not bad. It's
Sorry, I'm just kidding.
I know. The E is lowercase because it's something that we as writers don't control. We control the planning, we can control organizing and writing and revising. Examining, we need to let somebody else take a look at it. So we let it out of our hands to somebody else to work with and get comments back to us. So it's in a flow chart diagram or something, it would be something that would leave our control into another work stream and then come back to us. So that's why we put as a lowercase e to highlight that we can't do all of this stuff by ourselves. We have to have other people review things, help us look at things, make sure that we're on track. So that examining encompasses all of the review cycles, even though not necessarily in sequential order. So anyway, that's why we have it that way. So let's take a look at a couple of the exercises that you guys submitted yesterday and today. So I have up on the screen the customer focused rewrite exercise. If you remember what that looked like, there was a paragraph that had some self-focused things. It wasn't very customer focused, and as a few of you pointed out, there were some sneaky typos. So take a look at this, read this, and let us know of your comments.
That's when we can see the assignments.
Okay. Stuck on the title slide. All right. I apologize. Thank you for that. You see that now?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. What do you think? Any comments? Things that you like, things that you might change?
Kelson,
Yeah.
it's fine, but I would break it up a little bit more. There's a few periods there that I would use at least one, but for my very personal taste, I would probably use at least two.
Yeah. So break it up into a couple of sentences. Yeah, one thing that might be a rule of thumb, and I don't know if it works the same way. I'm trying to remember if it works the same way in Spanish. But when you're talking and you have to take a breath and you're still in the same sentence, maybe you need to look for either adding punctuation or completing a sentence. And there may be some of you who could read all of this in one breath if you took a huge breath and then just read. But we want to make sure that we're not losing our readers and being able to point out things. And there's great information in here. And yeah, Amy could do it, I'm sure. And great information here. It would be good with that adding periods to have breaking up some salient points of emphasis. So thanks, Eric. Any other comments? Another little sneaky thing that, yeah, go ahead, Brad.
Sorry, it's Brad, but just the few that I reviewed quickly. You know, the positive is pretty much everyone started with the customer's name, which is great. And then immediately, most of you, tried to focus on something important to the customer, whether it's alignment of the team, reducing cost, improving business results and things. So overall, the main basic underlying principles were followed pretty darn well as far as customer first, get right to the hot buttons and benefits, and make sure we answer in the theme statement, especially, we want to answer the question, why us? So what and why us? And so, yeah, I agree. This is way too long as far as a sentence, but it's a good draft, to start with. But overall, I saw, that some really good elements of customer focus were applied too.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Here's another one. You can scan that one, and kind of to Brad's point, there are great things in here. A couple of sentences, and that's allowable in theme statements, or excuse me, in rewrites of paragraphs. The paragraph is 3 sentences long. Sometimes to get the points in, you need to be a little bit longer in them, and that's okay. Okay. Here's before and after that we have used before. That wasn't it. This is it. Can you see that on the screen? Word document? Raise your hand if yes. Okay, thank you. So that was the paragraph you saw on the left, and here's an example on the right. Melania, do you have a comment?
No, sir, sorry. You said raise your
that's
hand
okay.
if you look the screen, so yeah.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to check. Thanks. Okay, one interesting comment to note is in the sample rewrite, notice the name of the company is Outdoor Sports Global, which is what is in our case study. So the previous paragraph shows Outdoor Sports Group, which, you know, that was a little nuanced. It wasn't required. If you had that as the Outdoor Sports Group as your customer, that was fine. Anyway, notice how you could also break some things up, taking a longer paragraph into a couple of shorter paragraphs. That makes it easier on the eye to read and follow. That's something that you could also do. Go ahead, Gonzalo.
I just wanted to say that it was those typos were pretty, like diaphragm and the rest, they were pretty funny.
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff.
Well,
Okay.
and we better make dang sure we're not using the wrong company name in our proposals, because that happens in real life. You know, we call a company a group instead of a company, or limited when it's not limited. And so that's something as proposal managers, even though it seems obvious and it seems like the sales lead is going to know, we need to make sure we're, one, correct in naming the customer name, and secondly, that we're consistent, that we don't call it Shipley Associates in one place and Shipley Corporation in another place.
Great emphasis point. Yeah, thank you for that. All right. Let's head back over to the next piece here of looking at theme statements. We were talking about the transition approach and asked you to put a theme statement together. Yeah, different spellings of the company name, right? So remember our theme statement formula. You start with a customer, you follow with a benefit, you follow with the discriminating piece if you can, then you have customer proof is one of them. I'm missing one, Brad. That's 4 of the 5.
You want a ROI if you can, return on investment.
Yeah, something quantified.
Yeah.
And you've got some, 30 to 60 days, and then in the example there, 18%. Now, you don't always have to have a proof statement specifically in your theme statement. That might be valuable to have as a call out or some other emphasis technique used to highlight that, and that could even be combined with a graphic, a simple graphic showing that increase. Again, a good visual way to reaffirm that. Okay, here's another one. Anything you like about that one or not? That kind of takes some of the information from the past performance and actually kind of commits to it in the theme statement. If that's something that can be done, great. I don't think Microsoft is going to be willing to do that, but one thing about this is it's pretty succinct. "25 words, not bad. Okay. Another example. This has a couple of sentences, and that's okay. Is anything missing from this that you might think would attract the reader's attention?
Maybe just one bit of proof will be nice.
Yeah. Or an ROI, a return on investment, a number in this may be good. So,
Correct.
Yeah.
But
So Eric, to your proof, go ahead.
No, sorry. I just wanted to say that other than that, I think it's really nice.
Yeah, I think it'll prompt the evaluator to want to read more. So Victor, go ahead, Brad. Go ahead.
This is really probably petty, but that second sentence that starts with featuring, we could flip that sentence and start with that last line and say, we will transition within budget and on time by featuring our resource continuity from phase to phase. So we're putting the benefit, the end result, on budget, within budget, on time first, and how we got there. So it's kind of a petty thing, but that's an example of what we mean by when we can, benefits before features.
Yeah, that's good. And I just prompted a thing too with what Amy read yesterday with 15 ways to kill the message or ruin the message, is that we put the action at the end of the sentence, and that can sometimes confuse our message. Okay, great. Victor, coming back to your question, you said, do you recommend that we quote specific customers outside the reference section? And I say, oh yeah. I think if we've got a valid customer quote or something like that, I don't know if that's what you mean. I think it is with quotes that they may say, to include it next to the location where that same topic or content is being discussed, because that becomes an incredibly strong proof point, not just saying in the text, yeah, we can do this, but you have a customer saying, yeah, they did it. So I think that's a tremendous tool to leverage as an emphasis point. And it could even be on the first page of a section. It could be a proof point for something that may be included in the theme statement, where you may not include the quote specifically in the theme statement, but you could include it close to that so that would be highlighted. Good question, thanks.
Yeah, Kelson, sorry, I forgot to raise my hand. On that very topic, I was just wondering, would it be maybe more appropriate to use it then on a colored box, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah, that would be great. Victor, you unmuted for a minute. Did you want to add to that? Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that in case of Microsoft, it's very difficult to quote specific customers in different sections of the proposals, different than the reference section or the case studies, or because they don't like it. There's some politics about the use of names that can derive in different lawsuits against the company.
Okay.
Just by the fact of mentioning it. That's the case with big companies like Microsoft. So
Okay.
that's why my question.
Okay. Well, you'd want to use the policy and protocol established by the company. There's great value in having stuff like that. Even if you don't mention someone by name, you might ask if you could use or summarize a comment and not make it not attribute it to a person, but say, IT manager, global banking company, something like that. And the customer then reading that, the evaluator in reading that will understand that this happened and you weren't allowed to use the person's name or the company's name. That's a common occurrence. So maybe that's something to continue to address with Microsoft, to see if there might be ways that you could add emphasis points from third-party sources without citing them by name or including an entire quote directly.
Actually, what we use is actual facts and numbers, and we don't, as long as possible, not to use the names of the customers. And this kind of situation is very useful for a medium and small size companies, but for the big ones, it might sound cocky. You know what I mean?
Oh, it could, and that's something that's also good to check with your team to say, hey, does this make us sound too cocky or arrogant? You know the customer, is that going to be a problem, or is this going to be okay? So it's great to validate that and get other people's opinions about whether something may be over the top. So, okay. Victor, thank you very much. Eric, thanks for your comments. There's an example of the action caption. Here's another one. Again, what we're trying to do with the caption itself is to provide a valuable and descriptive title, and also a conclusion for the reader as to what this graphic means and why it's important. Okay, a couple of options there. Okay. For those of you who haven't finished it yet, you've got some good examples now. So what you submit should be really good. Anyway, I'm just teasing you guys. Before we get into examining and revising, there's we want to make sure that since the executive summary is something that you guys work with a lot, and that there's a lot of emphasis inside of Microsoft about effectively using them, we wanted to go through highlights and reminders about best practices with executive summary. So I've asked Brad to lead us through that.
All right, sorry, get myself off mute. You know, a lot of the same principles that we've been talking about already that Kelson has shared apply to the executive summary. We need to treat it like a volume. We need to treat it as though it's the most important part of the proposal, the most likely to be read, especially by executives of the customer. So just a couple of points. We want to focus on the hot buttons in the executive summary. Prioritize these hot buttons if we know what they are. Now, I heard you all say, you know, yesterday that you don't know a lot of that. You're not getting a lot of this from the PLs and the sales leads or whoever. And, you know, I don't know if it works to ask them, you know, hey, you know, could you tell me what 2 or 3 of their main issues are that I could weave into the exec summary for you? You know, if we don't have them, we don't have them. But when we can find those out, prioritize them and address the most important points first. So in the case study, Jenna Vision, I think her top priority is revenue growth. And so in an executive summary, that's probably the first point we would want to address in summarizing our offer to Outdoor Sports Global is that we're going to help them achieve that #1 priority, which is revenue growth. If her #2 priority happened to be marketing effectiveness and outreach or online sales growth, then we address that next. So prioritize hot buttons. Always focus on what we think makes us different and better, the discriminators, that third bullet there. Use the organizational strategy that we've always talked about, that 4-box idea. I think some of you will remember this idea of an executive summary. You want to have a theme statement in an executive summary, a heading and a theme statement. Then you want to preview what you're going to cover in the 2 or 3 page exec summary with bullet points. Then the body, box 3, is that you describe each of those bullet points, and then box 4, of course, is a very quick and dirty summary. So we want to be clear, concise, correct, just like the rest of our proposal. And the executive summary should provide a roadmap. It should tell the reader, the evaluator, the customer what's coming. You know, that this is our offer, and this is how we're going to present it to you. Now, in the case of a Q&A proposal, where we're just filling in answers to questions on an Excel spreadsheet, obviously that doesn't apply. But often, those types of proposals do allow for an upload of a standalone executive summary. I know when we were bidding to Microsoft through Ariba, that was the case. You know, we had to put our responses in an Excel cell, but then they gave us the chance to upload an actual 3-page executive summary. So those are some key points about executive summary. I think you all understand the purpose of the exec summary. It needs to sell our solution. You know, it becomes one of our key sales documents along with the proposal. So it should confirm the customer needs there, make sure we articulate, we understand the customer's buying vision, what it is they want. We should provide proofs of any claims that we make, just like any other section in our proposal. If we can set apart ourselves and show competitive advantage, let's do it there. And then if there are some next steps the seller wants to convey, for example, a meeting. You know, maybe the seller is just trying to get the proposal to establish the next step, which is a meeting, a briefing. We should indicate that probably in the exec summary. You know, we look forward to meeting with you in the next few weeks to brief our solution or something like that. The next purpose makes the document easier to understand. Again, it should preview the balance of the proposal. It should highlight key points, key benefits, you know, their hot buttons. And then the executive summary really can be a collaboration tool. So a sales exec can take the executive summary often to the customer and sit down and go over it with them. You know, either post-award or, you know, in the commercial space, which isn't government-driven, sometimes I've done this myself. I've taken a notional executive summary, sat down with the client and said, now this is what we're going to be offering. Are we hitting the mark here? That's when I have a relationship with the customer, and they'll do that with it. They'll collaborate. So again, that's ideal. Doesn't really affect you all on the proposal side, but a good salesperson can use the executive summary to collaborate with the customer. Obviously, there's internal purposes of the executive summary. It helps us formulate and hone in on our sales strategy or message. It helps transfer information across SMEs and those others that are contributing. If we have an executive summary early or even a draft, and we can get that out to all contributors, including management, it helps us transfer the message, what we're going to be selling in our proposal. And then it should, obviously, it should be the anchor of proposal messaging. What's the main message in the proposal? That's got to be embedded in the executive summary. So those are some internal purposes. And we already really talked about the external, you know, make it a sales document, use it for collaboration, and really give it some focus. And I know real world, sometimes it's a last minute thing. You know, someone might come to us and say, hey, last thing we need on this proposal is a quick and dirty executive summary. Can you spit one out for me? And that's very frustrating, because now we're basically trying to pull out highlights and sound bites from the proposal and cobble it into an executive summary. It's much more effective to do that early and then let that be a tool throughout development. Any questions on exec summaries? I know that was quick and dirty. There's a whole section in the proposal guide on this too, so don't be afraid to refer back to that. And I know sometimes you're going to get pushback from the seller, you know, on what an executive summary is and isn't. So, you know, do your best to apply best practice, knowing that it can't always be done.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. That'll be something too as we continue to work with pursuit leads and sellers. Maybe even early on, that might be good to, you know, having a discussion about that, prompting a development of a notional executive summary that can be shared at the kickoff meeting and beyond. So anyway, thank you. All right. So we get into this next lesson. We're talking about examining and what that means and the activities that occur with that, the benefits to us, and then using reviews, using that information to help strengthen our message, and then making corrections for clarity, conciseness, and accuracy. Oh, and then a fourth one, to improve readability and evaluation scores. If we can improve the way that we communicate, so it's more clear to an evaluator, it's easy for them to find information, our scores will go up. Okay, so this whole section really is about how to improve our quality, our communication, and our emphasis. So as you remember, the activities that we talked about before, that how things have happened in the past, and sometimes we're still forced into this because of how things have been happening in Microsoft in the past. This is something that we can continue to work on and working with them to push towards planning and organizing early so that we can have, and the whole team can have, effective time to answer things strategically, have opportunities for good reviews, and rewriting to help us strengthen our message overall. So again, best practice. I'll continue to work on these things with our customer. So you'll remember this diagram that we did early yesterday. The different reviews that are part of that. You know, at least having these types of reviews so that we improve the overall quality and make sure that we're consistent with direction. Three things that are important in proposal timeline. Some of these things you don't control at all. For example, if they choose to bid on something, then they've already made that decision and they're coming to us with, obviously they're bidding this. Unless they make a decision later on in the process, which of course they can do, that may say, okay, we don't have enough of our things put together, or we've had a partner drop out or something where we are not going to submit this effort. So anyway, but typically that's a critical aspect in proposal development, to making sure that the company has a process by which they make decisions about what to pursue. Second critical thing in the timeline is the value of a proposal kickoff or a startup meeting. Many of you obviously do this already and have this activity as part of the work that you do in working with the pursuit leads and working with your assigned team. The value of those meetings in helping to establish the tone for the team, schedule, assignments, follow through, follow up, things like that help to help everybody to understand. You're able to have that best practice executive summary there with us to be able to communicate things, and that's great too. Anyway, that's an important part of the proposal process, to establish tone early. And then the third critical one is effective reviews. We're not in a creative writing class. We're not writing poetry or a novel or something like that. We're trying to communicate effective sales messages and help people make a buying decision. So by having effective reviews, we can get there. If we have poor information, though, that goes into a review, we're not going to get necessarily great quality out. So this is true with any aspect of gathering information to include in the proposal. If we're guessing as to what the customer really wants, if there are biases in our team's approach, or speculation about this is what the customer really means, or we're already working there and we're trying to expand and we think we've got it locked up because we're already there. A whole bunch of things that can cause problems in generating quality to submit for a review, because those reviews are only as effective as the information they have. I mean, a completely stupid example would be, you have an outline and that's what you take to the review. if you only have an outline, there's nothing that can be reviewed, and there's no way that that review team can help you improve it. So we've got to include correct and accurate information. And a good review may not be able to save a poor strategy or a bad solution. Sometimes we have the fortune of having some savvy people at that review to be able to help point out some critical flaws, but those kinds of catches need to happen earlier in the process. So as we plan and prepare for those reviews, that will help direct and increase the output that would come from those reviews. Okay. So, who needs to be involved? Oh, wait a minute. One more for the list. Big shot-itis. Big shot-itis. Okay. I like it. Brad, I think we need to add that to the slide. We are Microsoft. We're the biggest in the world. So I can picture King Kong on the Empire State Building pounding his chest. All right, ideas about who could be involved in examining your proposals. I know there's a process already in place with Microsoft, but it's good to have maybe if people or roles that are included on this in this list here, if they're not part of the reviews, then there might be value in mentioning to Microsoft maybe having a review of this section by a certain type of or a certain role. So again, we don't control this necessarily, other than the aspect of peer review that Microsoft continues to develop. And the real importance of that is that we are responsible for quality. We, Shipley, proposal managers, writers, and graphic personnel are responsible for quality. What we put out, what we put together, what we submit needs to be quality. So the aspect of peer review is important in that. But as far as other activities, other people that can help, possibly, depending on the nature of the work, could be legal, could be contract personnel. If you've got a larger proposal effort and you have multiple solution architects creating content, it may be valuable to have an oversight technical lead that can help evaluate that content from a technical perspective, while you support the efforts on a proposal perspective to be able to get the information right. So having the right minds in the room, as it were, to help review content is very, very beneficial. Some reviews have specific purposes. But overall, and this is even a great introduction to those that do reviews, to be able to help them understand things that could be reviewed and focused on. So Brad, would you talk a little bit about different review elements, or what you could ask specific people for?
Yeah, and that's key to, as Kelson mentioned, to effective reviews, making sure our instructions are clear. You know, just to throw someone, shoot over a document and say review it without telling them what, or specifically what. So what you want to do, maybe, for example, is maybe I go to one of you with what I think is the final proposal and say, would you just look this over for customer focus? You know, how's the quality of the writing? Is there anything you think we ought to improve on? Or you might have someone else say, you know, how does this look? I mean, visually, is this visually appealing to read? Does it look clanky or thick and cumbersome? What about the pages and document design? You know, is it or have someone read through look at the graphics and read through the captions? Have we told the story? Is the story being told throughout the document? If it's, you know, a bunch of answers to questions in Excel, have someone focus on one section and someone on another, and look for consistency in the writing. So those are some of the things you can focus on. Of course, you as proposal manager should be focusing on that bottom area of the pyramid, always compliance. You know, have we checked all the boxes? Make sure we didn't leave anything off that the customer asked for or required. So those are some of the areas that you can ask people to focus on. Just be specific. Don't be overly general when you're asking someone to review. Get very detailed and specific in your instructions. Here are some things, you know, you can this kind of reviews. Theme statements. Would you review the theme statements in each section? Is a value proposition coming across openly? Will the customer pick up on it? Again, these elements of customer focus. Is the customer named before us? Have we stated the benefits clearly? Or are we just focused on a bunch of features? That's one of the hardest things, by the way, as proposal managers and writers is to continually focus on the benefits. Have we linked our solution to the customer hot buttons? Have we given the reader or the evaluator a preview before dumping a bunch of technical content on them? Is it well organized? I'm over on the right side now. Do we clearly identify the benefits? Discriminators, are they obvious? Have we substantiated our claims? Are the visuals and action captions clear? Headings, what about our headings? Are they one-word headings and we're wasting prime real estate and easy reading? Or are they really informative headings that actually help reinforce and sell our message? Organization, and then active passive voice, you know, the actual quality of the writing again.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Okay, we'll step through briefly here before we go on a break. Looking at that first review of a pink team. The purpose of this review is to look at strategy before actual writing starts. This doesn't necessarily happen with all the things that you guys are doing. And I think you know, Carolyn was involved in the large JEDI proposal for the federal government, but I think, Carolyn, you were brought on after a pink team was done, and I think they typically do those as part of process on those larger federal proposals. But the real purpose of this is to look at strategy, have these kinds of inputs. So having capture information coming in and proposal strategies developed that you probably have helped to contribute in generating for what will continue to flow throughout the proposal. Giving instructions to those that are doing the reviews as to what their role is and the things you're looking for. Providing the evaluation factors from the RFP. Providing an outline as to what's included. Compliance checklist, so that can be something that is validated by reviewers, and then the actual content itself, be they information in planners as to the kinds of stuff that's been collected that they want to talk about, or if they're in mocked up or in the template already with the headers and bullet points about what's going to be addressed for each section. Something like that is sufficient to be able to do an effective review of strategies. And are we answering what's required? Do we have the best proof statements and things put forward to help us before we start writing? So then that review takes place, and then out of that, if there's any redirection necessary on strategy, it's easy to make it here at the beginning than after someone has written 20 pages of content that now needs to be thrown out. So any comments, recommendations that can come from that, and then we have verification that, yep, everything that's on the checklist, the compliance checklist, is addressed in our response. So there's value, and we continue to work with Microsoft on this best practice to help them focus on this earlier and have this be a valuable portion of what they need to do. Again, that's hard. And maybe sometimes you, as a proposal manager or writer, could also, if you're talking with subject matter experts or solution architects, could kind of reemphasize some points that will help them stay on track. And maybe it even might be an individual thing. So the methodology of the pink team is to prepare properly, both in with people and material and time. When in conducting a review, being clear on what people's assignments are, what you're expecting to come back from them, have them do that review and document things. This is not a wordsmithing session. This is not a rewriting session. This is, are we on target with our strategy? And then those action items that come from that then are assigned out to the team to be able to address going forward. Any comments on that? Again, best practice, again, not happening necessarily in this way, but might there be something as part of the process that you're using that could use elements of this to improve strategy confirmation and stuff early? The next one is that red team, and we will get to red team after our break. So let's take a break now at this point, 10 minutes, and we will see you back and at that time, and we'll keep going with our reviews. If anybody has any comments or things you want to bring up, feel free to chat about them. We'll address them when we get started again. Thanks. Okay, we're back. I don't see any comments or questions, so let's continue with looking at the red team. And talk a little bit about the difference of this review from the previous review. This review is intended to look at the actual writing in the proposal to see if it meets what the customer has asked for and needs. In some larger reviews or documents, larger documents for larger contracts and things like that, it's customary that the review is, if they are the customer, put on the customer hat, as it were, and see if, from their perspective, if our proposal addresses their needs. And if not, why not, and what recommendations could be made to improve the writing or the messaging. Gonzalo, you have a question?
Yeah,
a comment?
Kelson, I just wanted to comment that in my experience this year, most of my experience has been with the red team and what you call the proposal review 2 team. And this is what I've usually experienced here at Microsoft.
Great, okay. So here's what we encourage people to do as best practices with regard to this red team. We have the final proposal draft. Again, the quality of this draft going in, the better the quality of it going in and things being completed, the better the review can be. If we still have some holes in it, then it's going to be hard to review those sections. So we have the final draft. We have we give a briefing to the team to, again, help clarify what roles and responsibilities are, the purpose of the review. So we have the evaluation factors, what the customer is going to use in scoring the proposal, whatever we have with regard to that. And then assignments and instructions given to the reviewers, forms that they can use to make mark their scores and suggestions, and then again a checklist. We want to continue to make sure we haven't deviated from what we should be answering between our strategy review with the pink team and now the draft review. Outputs can be in a couple of different forms. One, if your customer is using a numerical scoring process or something like that, then the red team reviewers can score the proposal based on those criteria. So you would have something that is quantitative, a prediction that way. A qualitative one would be actual suggestions for changes, any comments, things, strengths or weaknesses, things like that, that they would be able to provide comments back on. And one of the instructions that's given to any red team reviewer as well is don't just say this isn't right or this doesn't look good or whatever. Provide some constructive, how would you change it? What would you do differently so that we can actually make a change? And then have documentation of findings. So the methodology is similar. Having someone designated as the lead, if that needs to be you as a proposal manager, then so be it. But getting people on board, give them the information that they need to do this correctly and well in advance, and enough time that they can actually be aware of what their roles and responsibilities are, and then the documents to be able to go through. That could be the read ahead package at the bottom. Conducting it is similar, where you let everybody know this is what we're doing. Here are the different kinds of reviews that are happening. Here's who's assigned to do what. It's typical that reviews mostly do a vertical review where one section is reviewed top to bottom. We encourage and continue to encourage Microsoft to use a horizontal review approach where one reviewer or two reviewers could be assigned to look at all the graphics and action captions, all the theme statements. Are we hitting the mark with those key emphasis points? So having that kind of continuity check as well throughout a proposal, because different people have written different sections. And then the response, it's better if the participants of the red team consolidate their comments and not just each individual submit, here's what I found, here's what I found, because that helps to adjudicate before we get to actually making changes, some of their comments may actually just not need to be addressed. Or, you know, 6 people found the same thing, and so that can be consolidated into one comment that is addressed by the team. And then afterwards, the cleanup of any document changes would be by a smaller team, you know, a couple of people participating. You, of course, would be in that role in doing that, and sometimes it's just you in making those adjustments to get it to a final document. Gonzalo, do you have another comment, or is that from previous? Okay, thanks.
That's previous, yeah.
Okay. Then we talk about a gold team, and I guess this correlates to the final approvals that need to be done before a document can be sent. So it's just justifying that the company is willing to submit this document, this proposal to the customer. They're willing to commit to the things that are included. So in particular, if you wanted to show the action items from a red team that have been addressed, then that could be something that would be included. That typically isn't in Microsoft. It's typically just a completed proposal. Green team that shows there is sometimes a separate cost review that occurs prior that we're typically not involved in. You know, we may be, as far as showing, you know, where the cost elements are included in the proposal, but if there are any changes that needed to be made, those things would be communicated to this final gold team, and they would then make sure that the changes that they asked for to be made were made. And then if you get the approved documents, then those are things that go forward to the customer. Or if they're last minute changes, then so be it. So those 3 examining things are things that we, as far as the proposal content is concerned, are the things that we recommend as best practice in the development process. This review, a white hat or a lessons learned review, happens after a proposal is submitted, and we gather information about how things work internally, and if we have customer information back about how our proposal did, things that they've said about it, then all of that information we could gather together and look at to see then what we could do better in the future, whether it's with this customer or with this PL or with this type of content, and how we do our own process and working with the team. Those are things that we can continue to collect. I know that there are lessons learned. There's a lessons learned folder. People can submit comments to, things like that. I think over time we tend to not submit those things anymore because there were some big lessons learned early in the process and not so much later necessarily. But I still think there's value in continuing with this best practice because it's effective not only for us individually, looking at, you know, working with the same PL that we had trouble with 12 months ago, and okay, here's what made it better. But there's also a way to be able to teach or mentor other people that may be coming into the team to help them understand some of the outputs from the process. It's a way to be able to help people with teaching through case study by personal example. Any comments about those reviews? All right. So after we get our examining comments back from whichever type of review, then we have the opportunity to adjust, to address the comments we've received, and also to continue to emphasize strengthening customer focus. So we can also do that in stages. It's an easy way to help compartmentalize, so we're not trying to see everything all at the same time and catch everything at the same time. We can compartmentalize or do different types of reviews through the document. It helps keep things more streamlined, and it helps us be able to focus on a few elements at a time. So we talked about, in particular, 3 stages, 3 C's here: being clear, being concise, and being correct. Let's talk about what those mean. So in being clear, we're talking about that our headings are appropriate or are clear, so we are able to, the evaluator can understand what this section is about and that it links to something that they are evaluating for. We can be clear in making sure we preview the content of sections, not just lead into it. We want to be able to show, okay, evaluator, here's our theme statement, here's our little intro, and here's what we're going to address. Boom, boom, boom. Preview that content and then follow that content in that order. We want to emphasize important points first, so that's using the up front, the top left, or the first page of a section to highlight critical or important points, or the first real estate, we call it page aspect of subsection. We want to include that kind of information up front, so we're clear to the evaluator what we're trying to get them to see and understand. We want to keep our setups short. So between the theme statement and where we're starting to talk about the solution, we want that information in there to be short. We don't want them to read a whole bunch of text leading up to what we're trying to do. Their time is limited. If we can quickly get to, we understand your concern, which is this, here's what we're going to talk about next, and then get on with it. That's keeping a setup short, and it helps the evaluator in their review. Talked a little bit about emphasizing key information. That can be done graphically, that can be done visually, to again, lead the reader, evaluator to what you want them to see. Another element of this is creating an appropriate tone. Clarity is also about connecting with the same kind of language used by the customer, wording and phrasing used by the customer. They understand, because they use those things, they understand what it means for them, and it helps to establish a proper tone with them, and to Victor's point, not being snotty or snobby or arrogant in our tone. And we also don't want to be too friendly. We don't want to turn a tone of "Che, pibe, ¿cómo va, bro?" We don't want to have that kind of a thing in our professional documents. We want it to be professional. Stage number 2, be concise. There are 3 components of this where we're looking at paragraphs. Do we have the best practices that we're talking about with paragraphs? Are we leading with the main point or the main theme of the paragraph? Are we keeping our paragraphs to one point? Or are we breaking them up so that it's easy to flow and follow our thought process? The next level is revising sentences. Do we have something that's 45 words long? Do we have something that is maybe redundant for what we said just 2 lines above? are ways that we can make our communication clearer in that way. And then revising words. Is our word choice appropriate for, are we using the right terminology? Are we using, in our active verbs, are we using an action word, or are we using a get or do, or something that may be just not very descriptive? Not that we have to come up with flowery words or anything like that. The main thing is to communicate directly what we're doing and find the best words to do so. Third stage is be correct. So here we are now looking at a broad spectrum of things. References that we're including, we need to make sure that those are accurate and that they're still valid references. Mechanical things in our document, spelling and punctuation and grammar. Word problems, whether they be how we're, plurals, for example, or do we have the right plurals related to what we're talking about? Do we have the word the in our sentence where it needs to be, or do we need to use it? Again, if we're dealing with American English, we use the article the a bit more than possibly in the UK. So it's a sensitivity to what words need to be used and what words are comfortable for use in the country in which we're writing. We want to make sure we're consistent across the document. If we're talking about we're going to have stuff done in 30 days, then we need to make sure it says 30 throughout the document if that's what we're talking about. Let's watch out for acronyms, making sure we define them and you're using them properly. If math is included, let's double check that, make sure that that's accurate. And then another best practice could be used, it's called the wall of truth. One thing that has been done in the past is to take printouts of the proposal, actually put it up on a wall, and just visually by looking at things you might see, oh, we've got 7 pages of text there with hardly any graphical elements. We need to maybe break some things up, or else we're going to kill the evaluator in that review. Or making sure that our customer name is spelled right, that the terms are right, that whoever we're calling in a certain role, that we're using the proper role name. If it's capitalized or lowercase, making sure we're consistent with how we address that throughout. Anyway, those types of things that will help us to be correct and not cause problems or stumbling blocks for the evaluator. We all do this. We all have this. When we're looking at something in an article or in a magazine or a newspaper or something like that, and we see a typo, or we see a punctuation error, or we see an improper word of use of a phrase or something like that, you think, whoa, that's not right. And then sometimes if you find a second one, and I'm guilty of this, I find a second one, then I've lost all interest in the article. I'm just looking for other typos or other problems. They've lost me because I can tell they haven't been as consistent in some of their approaches in how they're communicating with me. And that may just be my view, but if someone is writing a proposal to me and they haven't taken the time to look at things to make sure that their document is going to communicate effectively to me, if they've missed some of those things, and it shows to me a carelessness in what they've prepared, and reduces my level of trust. Now, having said that, the other part is that we're not going to be able to necessarily catch every mistake. But in good reviews, in good writing, in good activity that we're putting together, if we can limit the number of those mistakes to a couple at most, maybe in a document, or maybe we would do something differently, but maybe the customer doesn't see it. No, that's okay. That improves the quality of our message and the presentation, and doesn't become a detraction in our communication. Any comments about those 3 revision stages? Yeah. Yeah, we did have meat and diaphragm in that first exercise. So for you guys that haven't done that first exercise yet, if I see meat and diaphragm in there, I'm going to come tease you. All right. All right, so as we have feedback that comes back from our reviews, we're looking at improving our readability of our documents. As we're more clear in our writing and in our messaging, it improves what we're communicating, improves the understanding of the evaluator, and improves our chances of winning. Doesn't guarantee a win necessarily, but it improves that. Okay, so here are a couple of things that will help us with readability, and these things are included in the proposal guide. So we encourage you, if you haven't taken a look at things in the proposal guide for a while, maybe go back and look at some of these topics to refresh your memory about how, in American English or even the UK English, different phrasings or usages are more appropriate. So here are a couple things about headings. There simply encourages use of 2 types of headings. One is a telegraphic heading, and this typically comes directly from the request proposal, typically at a top section or maybe a second section where they may just have a word of like quality or implementation or introduction or something like that. To mirror that in our proposal as a heading obviously makes it easy for the evaluator to find the corresponding information. What we can encourage you to do at levels below that telegraphic heading is to not just use another telegraphic or single word or 2 words, but to include a sales message in that heading, or what's going to be reflected under that heading. So instead of just saying solution as the second level, solution to improve sales performance gives the evaluator information about, okay, the intent of this section is they're going to show me how we can improve sales performance rather than just solution. Another one, for organization, maybe a heading in the RFP, we can include that as our first level heading, and things that we might be able to do underneath that could be, hey, we have a flat organizational structure that reduces overhead cost, as opposed to just org chart or structure. Sometimes using that space, since we have a heading, we can include a sales message. Other one, maybe is a subset of design for tailoring to the retail market. Again, you get some ideas about ways to possibly leverage lower tier headings to include sales messages. Okay. So for example, from the case study, we have some telegraphic and informative headings. For example, a section from the case study was lessons learned. So that may have been the section numbering and the title. But maybe we could make that informative, since it's a lower tier heading, not a 6.3 heading, but a subheading. It could be lessons learned apply to ensure transition success. Now, the content underneath these sections may not be vastly different. In fact, it could be identical. But there's value in pointing out to the evaluator, we will apply these to ensure transition success. Leading them to, we see the value in this, in these lessons learned, to be able to help improve Outdoor Sports Global. We talked briefly about using the customer's language. Well, you may not have specific, you won't have the interaction with the customer. You will have interaction with the customer's language. So in words that were communicated to the seller or to the PL, words that they communicate in their documents, and any communication that they have outside of the request for proposal, you want to look at those types of things, gather those, and use their exact words, and see if we can identify what they mean by those words. If the seller is able to identify hot buttons, so we want to make sure we reflect those hot buttons basically word by word in our responses, so that the customer can see that we're addressing that specifically. So customer language is important to maintain that, and not necessarily change it to, oh, customer said this, in Microsoft parlance or Microsoft language it's this, so we're going to continue using our word throughout our proposal rather than using the customer's word. Punctuation, always a big challenge, especially when we've been accustomed to looking at a document for a long period of time. Sometimes we miss things. Another good reason for having reviews. If you misuse a punctuation mark, you risk confusing your reader on one side and appearing careless, which is my point, on the other. So, example, Brad, says Mallory, is a boring old fool. So who's the boring old fool? Brad. If you don't have some punctuation in there, was there before, it changes the meaning. Brad says Mallory is a boring old fool. Not that you're going to include this language, of course, in your proposal, but punctuation matters.
Mallory needs to be nicer to me.
Yes. Would you guys all drop a note to Mallory and tell her to be nice to Brad? Oh. Notice that we didn't insert any of your names in here. Okay. Continuing with readability, lists. Lists are valuable as a graphical element on a page to help create some white space, but we need to be consistent in how we're doing them. This list on the left has some key points to it, but also some confusion. Look at if you need something that's numbered or not. If an order in your list is important, then include numbers. We try to have our entries in a list be short rather than complete sentences. However, sometimes they are complete sentences, and if you do have complete sentences, then you use periods in your bullets list. If you have nested lists or sublists, sometimes they can confuse. Sometimes there's font variations, bullet graphic variations, a lot of stuff that may be confusing to the reader. We want to make sure we're streamlining things and making things more consistent. So, for example, on the other side here, best practices with lists. First, name the list. That does not mean that you need to make a heading for the list, but it does mean that before you introduce the list, or as you're in your introduction of the list, that you indicate what it's about. So you're calling this list to have some purpose. Second, make items parallel. What does that mean? Someone like to chat about what that means to make the list or make items parallel? Same level, okay. Yeah, that's one component of it. What do you notice about the first words used on the right side for each bullet?
Oh, they're all verbs.
Say it, Eric?
You're using verbs to start your sentences.
Yeah, they're all verbs. So it provides clarity because they're all the same form of word. As Brad says in the comments, if we start with an ing word, then the rest of the word should also be ing. So naming, making, using, limiting, highlighting. If we're not going to use verbs, then that's something that we could use. So anyway, we want to make sure that our items are parallel in the list, so they all have the same structure. Again, use bullets unless the order is important. You don't want to have a huge long list. Try to limit the number of items that are included in that list. And then, again, using white space to highlight that this content is separate from regular text. So, good way to be able to use lists. You can also use lists in graphics, or have a color box that might include a couple of things as key points with checkpoints or something like that. Anyway, good use of lists. Active and passive. Passive voice can be vague, no attribution really, or weak attribution of who's responsible for something. Mistakes were made by Terry versus Terry made mistakes. The document will be signed and submitted by the project manager versus the project manager will sign and submit the document. So active voice assigns action to someone and is better in communicating our messages. So a couple of other examples here. Passive on the left, active on the right. See, on the left, we don't even say who will do it. On the right, we're assigning the activity to an assessor or the assessors. Here we have stuff will be submitted, but nobody is submitting them. Active voice, we can assign action to a person or a role. Active voice helps us be more clear in communicating to our evaluator. Even if the assigned person doing the action is we, that's okay. Yeah, passive voice is a way to not commit to anything, right? Sometimes we need to use it, but we should try to look for active voice. Okay, a couple of other things. We want to eliminate wordy phrases. So words that you may see like this, or things that may come to mind, have the ability to, let's just keep it simple. Why don't we just investigate? We tend to obscure what we mean by trying to add these other words. Let's just modify. Let's just use. Keeps it simple, and not have to read through so much stuff to get to what we mean. So here's additional things. Not. You remember that Liz will take you out behind the woodshed and beat you up if you have enclosed herewith please find, or we are happy to submit, that kind of thing, right? But again, more language that is redundant. Let's just be simple. Here's a fun example. What does this sentence mean? Yes, I'd like you to respond in your chat window. What does it mean? What does that, simplify that sentence? Pass the French fries. I smashed. Victor, that may very well be. And I'd be interested if you would go to the discussion section of Shipley Online and post that and get other people's comments on that as well, because I'd like to see that and read about that. Okay, fork to mash potatoes. Used a spoon for some sugar. Starch thing has you confused. Okay. All right. Yeah, it could be pasta. But it was potato in this instance. Okay. More on readability, using verbs that are descriptive and precise. So here's some examples. A vague verb is allows for. Oops. Performs task. Perform is okay in one context, but performs task reviews hides the meaning. The manager reviews tasks. Provide opportunities for training. Provide really confuses things. We will train. A lot of times we talk this way on the left when we are meaning the things on the right. So in our writing, we can be clearer about words we use. How about some cliches? Here are some that are common in the United States. Can you think of any others? What are some that you have faced or seen? Some pet peeves that you have about language, cliches that you see people use? Proactive, okay. I've seen world class, state of the art, yeah, great. Highly skilled team of professionals, yeah, what does highly skilled mean? Yeah, over the top. Gerardo, I can't, oh my goodness. I would pull my hair, I don't have much hair left. Highly skilled team of professionals, yeah. Industry leading, unmatched, yes. Okay. Accomplished, help confirm, help facilitate. Okay, there's ways we can all work on helping the writers in clarifying their message and also not falling into some of the same traps ourselves. Great, thanks for your comments. False subjects. There's the definition of false subjects. It is common to do this, but words like it and there, it's common that we use that in speaking. But we can clean things up when we're writing. As we rephrase the sentence, it allows us to get more clarity, or be more clear. In my talking, I didn't even do that. We can be more clear in what we mean. How about redundant words? Some of those things are kind of funny. I mean, we see them frequently. Advanced planning, isn't that what planning is? It's done in advance. So is this advanced planning? Depreciate in value, or past history, future history. Anyway, just things that slip into the language use that actually confuse. Victor, I do too. So don't worry about it. One other thing that we use frequently in our writing is a spell checker that's typically part of Microsoft Word, or the grammar checker, or other electronic tools that help us catch common errors or common problems. Luna, if you are willing, since you raised your hand second on the last time that we were asking for a participant, would you be willing to read this one, what comes up on the screen?
Okay.
All right.
I have a spelling checker. It came with my PC.
Yep.
And the next sentence too. It's
Yep. Keep going.
it plainly marks for my review mistakes I cannot see. Well,
So when you're, yeah, the words
Uh-huh.
the words you're reading are weird, but the way they sound, it could be
yeah,
other words that make sense, right?
yes,
Okay.
I can guess what it want to speak, want to express.
Yeah. So keep going. There are a couple more.
I strike a key and type a word and wait for it to say whether I am wrong or right it. Shows me straight away.
Yep.
A lot
Keep
of
going.
mistakes.
Yes.
As soon as a mistake is made, it knows before too long, and I can put the arrow right. It's rarely ever wrong. Ever wrong.
Yeah. Okay, final one.
As soon as a mistake is made, it knows before too long, and I can put the error right. It's rarely ever wrong.
Okay. You see the next one?
Yes. I
It says,
have
I have,
run.
yeah, go ahead.
I have run this poem through it. I'm sure you're pleased to know it's letter perfect all the way. My checker told me Sue or see.
Told you so. All right. Thanks,
Thanks.
Luna.
Well,
I'm
welcome.
sure everybody's excited or pleased that you took that on. And they did. Thank you. So the point of this is that we shouldn't depend solely on our electronic revision things to be able to catch everything. In fact, it's frequently the case in Microsoft Word where sections from previous documents may have been copied in, and for some reason, some elements of that, the spell checking was turned off, or something was turned off so that it doesn't include an assessment of that section. And yet, when we read through it, we can find mistakes. If we depend only on these electronic techniques to be able to catch everything, like a spell checker or like a grammar checker, we may be missing our communication points. So, all right, thank you. So here's another fun one. Someone else want to take a chance to read? By raise of hand? This one's easier than the last one. All right, Gerardo, you're up.
All right.
Keys to writing gooder proposals.
Do not use double negatives.
No, you missed a word there, right? Do not use no double negatives.
No double negatives, yeah.
Okay.
Avoid comments that are not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Verbs have to agree with their subjects.
That's right. It would be have to agree, not has.
Yeah.
Yep.
Never use a long word when a diminutive one will do.
And what does diminutive mean? You know what I mean?
Like when you
It just means short.
Like yeah, like when you do it short, like in acronyms and stuff, I think. Am I right?
Yeah, diminutive means short or small. Yeah.
Yeah. Proofread carefully to see if you any words out.
Yes.
Never ever use repetitive redundancies. Avoid cliches like the plague.
Of course, using a cliche.
Sure. Address the pet peeves.
Okay, now everybody has pet peeves. In graphics, in writing, everybody has pet peeves. We all have personal things that just drive us nuts. And you've shared some of those things already with, like Gerardo saying that they keep using this exact same terminology throughout, right?
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of pet peeves. You have no
Go
idea.
ahead.
Well, we've had some cases sometimes, and Carolyn, she's my backup on this one. People tend to not do graphics like the right way. I usually ask for them to like do like a rough sketch on PowerPoint, or like the best way possible, so I don't get a lot of time doing it, and I I can advance a lot more in regarding graphics. And they and you know the story, Kelson. They send graphics like handwritten in a napkin or something. Yeah,
Yep.
just like Victor is commenting over there in the chat. They send things in a napkin, or scans, or they there's a lot of people on Microsoft that they have the Surface computers, and you can draw on those computers. So they do things that look like Egyptian glyphs that I really don't understand, and it's really hard, and that's kind of like my main pet peeves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Amy, thanks. We'll see you. Victor, did you have your hand raised?
Wrong button again, sorry.
That's okay. All right. Anyway, there are things that are triggers for us sometimes that we want to make sure are addressed, and we can help communicate that with others on the team, and make sure we catch things, especially as we're reviewing each other's work and a peer review process. So, great. So, different checklist items we can include in communicating with those that are doing reviews. There are things that could be with an overall approach. So how we structured our content. Are we emphasizing our win strategies? Do we have, how's our, where is our theme statement included? Is it concise? Does it include a value proposition or a return on investment? Or are we stating specifically how, or the so what and how so for our customer? Do we know what the customer's vision is, what the reason is for making this purchase or buy? Are we linking to that? Are we making sure that we're highlighting how we're addressing their needs? And lots of things with content, how it's organized. Are we identifying clearly the benefits? Do we have discriminators, and are we including them and using them, highlighting them? Are we substantiating things? More things regarding customer focus. A key thing that we continue to talk about is putting them first, and that helps us when we put them first to say how they're going to benefit next. Do we have clear visuals? Do we have action captions? So we call out the visual before we see it. Headings and subheadings, are they informative? Are we using that space to emphasize our message? And other things down to the paragraph level, the sentence level, proofreading, making sure that we're clean and clear and correct and concise as we can with our responses and our efforts. This also includes a little bit about a mock-up. I'm not sure that you guys actually do this very often. I know you don't specifically with dynamics, but sometimes you may be able to use a tool like a mock-up in making assignments to writers, so they're not just looking at an outline and that's all they have, but there might be a way to use this graphical tool to help people write better. So the mock-up is intended to be a page-by-page allocation of how many pages might be limited to a certain section, and then have it broken out and used this way, that 10% of the page space is used for the title, a theme statement, and the intro. 10% at the end used for summary and actions, their next steps, and then the middle 80% addressing the requirements with customer focus. So here's some guidelines about how to do that. You've got page style or templates, whatever. Make sure you use the number of blank template pages that are assigned, and then start mapping things into that. Headings, suggestions for where call-outs or other accent points could be, then flowing in where graphics might be, where the theme statement would be, action captions, things like that help the writer go from looking at 3 blank pages that I've got to fill to, okay, I've got sections in here that I need to populate, but I don't need to fill 3 pages now. I only need to fill like 2. And that helps get information communicated to a writer. If you have these kinds of, if there are these kinds of bullet points, then they know to expand on those things. Anyway, it's a tool to be able to help get writers started, to help them see in context of the template, what things look like, where things are, that may facilitate their writing. So just a possibility if you need to use that. Okay. Now I've kept you over a little bit because we're basically here at the end, so I think you'll be okay with that. So we've talked about throughout the thing about this course about POWER, planning and organizing and writing and examining and revising. So we've talked about the 7 characteristics of effective proposals. That's guidance that we can use as proposal professionals in whatever we're doing, whatever we're approaching, whatever we're tasked with. We want to make sure we're emphasizing customer focus. And as we continue to do that, then we'll also get more of our writing team and pursuit leads and others to recognize that as well and contribute their content in a customer-focused way. So we want to use it as the basis for creating a proposal. We want to plan correctly and gather the right information. We want to organize our information based on what they've requested of us or based on their priorities, if they haven't given us a specific order. We want to write with clarity and conciseness. Make sure we are focusing on benefits, on discriminators, proof points, value propositions, get them to see the value in our message. and where we can, include competitive information, pointing out errors in other approaches, or highlighting things that we do well, that we know our other competitors don't do well, or raise questions about their approaches. E for examine or get, have reviews that contribute to the quality of our presentation and content and strategy. And then take the time, or make the time, and communicate this with the team as well, to revise, to help improve readability. The team will find out is if they allow us that time, then the message can be clearer rather than rushed. So again, you've seen these. You have those in the materials section. You can, this actual slide is a separate slide you can pull down and print out and have as a reference point next to you whenever you're doing some writing. You want to check for customer focus. It's a colorful way, and maybe Gerardo and Maria Jose would, or Melania would, include something different. Maybe you guys can create your own 10 indicators slide and decide how you want to distribute it. So it's your own, I don't know. All right. Summarize some top 10 tips in proposal writing. Number 10, know your customer and know about your competitors. That'll help to improve the strategy included in what's written. And that's information that you, of course, gather from your PLs or your sellers as best you can. Understand the win strategy. Communicate win strategy to the team. Again, this is interaction with the seller side of the house. So clarify requirements. Make sure we understand what the customer's asking for. If we don't know something, then we ask. Get clarification as what they mean by different terms. Let's not guess. Work to plan first, then organize, then draft. Do we have discriminators that we can include? Is it something that we answer the so what and the how so for our customer? In our writing, we can start anywhere in that outline and go everywhere. We're not required to start at the top. There are lots of things that we can do to get content in and placed that will help us advance the proposal. We'll be careful in our use of boilerplate and our use of chorus. And we can review as we go along how things are going in the proposal with regard to the 7 characteristics of effective proposals and the customer focus indicators. Good things to kind of keep as reference points that will help us improve our quality. All right. You've done it. You've listened to us to this point. Thank you very much for your participation in this. Here's your final assignment. We have given you in Shipley Online, and I don't know if it's part of the materials here, it might be. We've given you a template to that has heading styles and colors and other things that you can use to create a draft section for the transition approach. So we want 3 or 4 pages of that. Look at transition approach, create an outline, create components that you want to address in 3 or 4 pages. It does not have to be 100% accurate as far as all the text that is included. You have some specifics that are given to you in the RFP that you can include, but you're free to invent some other content as needed. Leverage past performance, other things that you would want to express and include in a section to convince your evaluator about Vibrant's transition approach. There's a final exam at Shipley Online. It's a test thing, and you can take that as many times as you need to get the best score. And then we also have a course evaluation. We'd like to hear your input about things that you would like to see included in this course, possibly. We've tried to streamline some things here so it's not completely the course we present to people learning about this process the first time, but we'd like to hear from you. So, and the final one is, make your next proposal your best. Okay, one guiding point about the assignment. We'd like each of you to do this individually, as if you're working on your own for this. The purpose of that is to individually be able to practice things that are taught, so you can see ways that you can individually improve. I know in common practice, what we do is we lean on each other and we work together on things, and that's valuable and essential in working with Microsoft and helping us all succeed together. But if you would please, for this exercise, work on this on your own and submit your own work. Appreciate that. Okay. That's it. Any comments or questions from you before we let you go? Go ahead, Luna.
Yes, I have a question. The final exam should be submitted by August 2nd. It's
Yes.
a unit, but the August 2nd will be the vacation in Costa Rica.
Okay.
Will it checked with the date, or it doesn't matter?
Yeah, well, I set a due date for it, but just get it done when you can. If you need more time beyond the end of the closing date of the course, which was that the 7th?
Okay.
I don't remember now.
And or it can be finished before this date, right?
Oh yeah, yep.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
The exam should only take you about 10 minutes. I would get that out of the way as quick as possible.
Oh, great.
Yeah, pretty simple, not really heavily demanding of your time. And you can take it more than once. If you go through and guess everything and you get half of them right, then you can still go back and get them all right. So, but the final exam is part of the score for for passing the class. You know, we don't give a percentage score or anything like that for the class. If you've participated and submitted the assignments and do those final assignments, then you get credit for the course. Okay, Jeanette, we'll work with you on that. Okay, not a problem. You guys do the work you're being paid for first, and we'll work things around if you need additional time. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you being able to attend. We'll work towards getting a schedule set up for additional training for the managing course and the capture course. So we'll work with you on timing for that. We want to make sure that you have access to the best training that Shipley can provide, that we do provide in these areas, and help strengthen your efforts in supporting Microsoft. From Brad and me, thank you very much. We'll let you sign off. Have a wonderful weekend, and say hi to Brad and Janae for me in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Kelson. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you,
Thank
Kelsey.
you.
Brad.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.